morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all participating in the discussion and to all watching. Thank you for joining us on this very lovely Sunday, and a huge thank you to our outstanding panel for making this session possible. Chai and Just Chat has hosted 40 plus monthly sessions since 2017. It will be our 4-year anniversary in August of this year. We have been striving to advance various humanitarian efforts through productive interactions among professionals, community advocates, experts, and shared resources. Our focus has been advocacy, communication, education, and action-oriented dialogue. These sessions bring various experts and community members together to discuss action items for the various challenging situations we face. Just to mention a few, Chai and Just Chat has engaged in discussions around the topics such as startups, world peace, environmental culture, aging, crime prevention, journalism, childhood cancer prevention, health and diet, cultural identity, and topics like from cradle to cane. More recently, Chai and Just Chat has been lucky to onboard our 17-member advisory board, and our first advisory board meeting will be held in June of 2021 to discuss Chai and Just Chat's future sessions and our overall strategy. Today's session will discuss spectrum of autism and neurodiversity. We are bringing to you a panel that will help us better understand neurodiversity, what it means, the social challenges faced by neurodiverse people, and how we can better embrace neurodiverse people as a part of our mainstream.
So let's start with Megan. If you can give us a brief introduction about yourself, apart from what Ashwini has mentioned, that would be great.
Sure. Yes, I have 2 beautiful daughters. I live in Atlanta, Georgia. For the past 20 years, I've worked in various capacities, serving individuals with neurodiversities. Right now, what I do is I run and own Parallel. And we are an organization that helps companies with workforce development. And I also work with families on preparing for an inclusive future.
Very nice. Thank you so much. Tiffany, we spoke very briefly before, and we're meeting for the first time. Thank you for joining us all the way from California. So it's like almost 7:30 in the morning. You do have your coffee or your chai with you.
Yes.
And tell us very briefly about yourself.
My name is Tiffany Jameson, almost Dr. Jameson.
Yeah, congratulations.
I'm finishing up my PhD in organizational psychology, and my focus has been on neurodiversity and disability employment for the last 3+ years. I'm the founder and managing partner of Grid and Flow. So we're a workplace consultancy. We help businesses be inclusive. So this means we help them with their policies, their procedures. We work with partners like Megan, who brings in wonderful talent, and we make the place really ready for this talent to thrive and prosper. I'm also a mom of 2 gorgeous children, like Megan, but my son is autistic. He's now 19, finishing up his first year in college, and my daughter, who has ADHD, is finishing up her junior year in high school.
Very nice. Thank you, Tiffany, for joining us, and congratulations, and keep us posted on your graduation. Wishing you all the many good things that you will do for the world. And Praveen, why don't we go with your introduction briefly? I know you are a celebrity for many, Praveen, in the inspiration stage. I've been inspired by you in a very short time that I've come to know you. If you can briefly introduce yourself, please.
Yeah. Thank you, Nazeera, and hi, everybody. My name is Praveen. I live in Rochester, Minnesota, and I'm here for the last 20 years. And I'm working for a healthcare organization as a data analyst. And I have a family. My wife's name is Mamata, and I have 2 kids. And my elder kid having autism, and he was diagnosed in 2006. So in the part of the journey, when I went to India in 2013, I saw many people, many parents, many children having difficulties of a lot of resources. So I started an organization via social media, through like different channels. Like we were connected to several support groups in India. So our main goal is to tell every parent that to be able to live with autism, to make continuous progress every day, the parent should be the main therapist for the children. So,
very nice.
So we have made that line get into the hearts of the parents. And I speak to so many parents every day through different channels. And we were reaching, like, I can say proudly that we are the largest group in India with a lot of positive credentials. And we have so many professionals, therapists, teachers, therapists, doctors, everybody is in our group, and we are helping each other. And we are like a big resource for the parents who cannot afford therapies. So
Very nice,
yeah,
Praveen.
yeah.
Thank
So
you.
yeah, thank you.
No, thank you for joining us, Praveen, and please look forward to many more connecting with you on social media to join the group. Definitely your resources are much needed apart from what Tiffany and Megan are all providing as well. Jessica is someone whom I know from probably a last decade. Oh my gosh, don't tell me how I'm aging, Jessica. Jessica is working as an external affairs in the department in Fulton County government, and we've worked on several projects in the past together when I used to be in the county government as well. So Jessica, I applaud you. Apart from all the busy, unexpected work coming out from the county, you also find time to volunteer. So can you please tell us about that?
Thank you so much, Nazeera, and good morning, everyone. My name is Jessica Corbett, and I also live in Atlanta. I have, as Nazeera mentioned, in my day job, I am the Director of External Affairs for Fulton County Government, where we are responsible for primarily communications and intergovernmental affairs work. I also am the parent of two children, and my son, who is 12, has autism. And I've also been volunteering as a volunteer advocacy ambassador with Autism Speaks. One thing, though, I'd like to highlight for today's conversation is in my work at Fulton County, I've had the opportunity to host several interns from inclusive post-secondary education programs in Georgia. And in Atlanta, we have programs at Georgia Tech and Georgia State universities, and have had student interns with autism working in our office. And so I've had the perspective of knowing people with autism, both as a parent and as an employer. And that has been a really enlightening opportunity for me as we prepare for my own child's future, but also as an advocate to help prepare other people for future employment.
Very nice. Thank you, Jessica. We're going to learn a lot from you as well. Next, we have Rupa. Rupa is someone I know from probably we've been on and off in touch and not in touch. But Rupa, please introduce yourself.
Sure. So, hi, everyone. My name is Rupa Iyer. I live here in Atlanta, Georgia. I am a parent to a 13-year-old son with autism who's also nonverbal. And so I have an interest in being a part of an initiative, and as my son grows into adulthood, looking at how to help these children be independent and leverage their strengths. I'm very excited to be a part of this panel, and it's nice to know some of you have children with autism as well. So I think that connection is great. One of my areas of interest from an advocacy standpoint is, especially for children who are nonverbal, to provide them with means of communication. My son uses an augmentative communication device to communicate, and I think technology is just, I mean, it's amazing, and it provides so much opportunity. So that's one of my areas of interest, and I look forward to participating today. So thank you for including me. And I have my 13-year-old son. I also have a 10-year-old daughter and a new puppy.
Oh, awesome. Thank you so much, Rupa, for taking the time this morning. Next, we have Dr. Geetika Agarwal. Dr. Geetika, if you can briefly introduce yourself, and then finally, Mr. JV as well.
Thanks, Nazeera, for including me in the panel, and Megan for thinking about me. My name is Geetika Agarwal. You can call me Geetika. As part of my training, I'm a psychologist and a behavior analyst, and I have 15 plus years of experience across different settings, and then have also been fortunate to work across different countries. And one of the things that I've seen for myself as a clinician over the years is I've grown to appreciate and admire and find the value of having parents as part of the therapy process. And I echo Praveen's sentiment when he was talking about parents as therapists. And that's one of the focus that I've had in my role as a professor of autism and applied behavior analysis. I try and emphasize and make sure the students are understanding the importance of parent and as being an equal part of the team and not just an ancillary to the discussion. And that's also something that we strive in my school in Bangalore, where I'm a director, where we try and train and empower parents so that they can continue to be not just an advocate, but then also support their students and children once they leave our settings. I'm continuing to grow and learn a lot, and I think I'm always very humbled by some of the wonderful work that I'm hearing today, and then also that I continue to read about from people across different spectrum, and then also across different domains related to autism. So I'm very excited about hearing everybody today.
Very nice. Thank you, Geetika, for joining us this morning. And there's so much to learn from you today as well for the viewers and even among the panelists. JB, I know you are joining all the way from Heathrow Airport, and please have a safe flight though. You might have to leave in the next half hour. So if you can introduce yourself and just talk a little bit more, though I wanted to start with an other topic, but if you can just give a little bit more information about what is that you do and why did you get, why are you doing what you're doing, especially with specific to autism. If you can unmute yourself, please.
Yeah, so Nazeera, thanks for having me, and pleased to meet all the panelists and people who are watching online all over the world. As you said, I'm calling in or checking in from Heathrow Airport, but I started my career as a software engineer, and I did product management, program management, all the different things in the technology and also leadership and management side. Things changed when we discovered our own son was diagnosed with autism. So I see a link with all the people in the panel almost that they have somebody related to autism. So that's how you get to do great things, right? So it changed my perception about autism. And I didn't even know what's autism up to until that point. So I started to do a lot of research, and I wanted to help my son. And then I started a parent support group, and most of the parents, he's okay now, but I don't know what's going to happen when he's grown up and what happens after me. All these things comes into play. So that's when I decided I have to do something. If I don't do something, who's going to do it? So that's how Autism Collab was started. So this is basically the word collab is because autism, it takes a village to raise a child, and this is not a regular child. This is a special need child. You need a whole slew of people like teachers, doctors, social workers, occupational therapists, speech therapists, and obviously the parents. So the main purpose of Autism Collab is to connect all the people in the autism ecosystem in one place so that they can work on a common goal and to keep everybody's on the same page, because consistency is very huge to raise these kiddos. And the ultimate goal is to really to get them jobs in the future, because there's a huge discrimination out there. But I know that they're very gifted in a particular area. For example, my son is very gifted with math and science. He can be an incredibly gifted programmer or something like that. But he may not be good with social gatherings and stuff. So each kiddo in the spectrum, they are called special needs because they are very special in a particular. I'm very average in everything, right? I'm not very special. They are very special because they are very good at something and not so much in other things. So the key is to find the niche they are really good at and them exposed to that thing and make them use that to their advantage and be a productive member of the community. So that's the ultimate goal of Autism Collab. But I'm happy to answer any other questions that you may throw at me. So
Sure. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us all the way. And we'll make sure we throw one or two questions before you leave as well. And again, we have 3 parts to our discussion this morning. One, I'll be giving a few general questions so you get to know the panelists a little bit more. And then the next part will go into specific to neurodiversity, what, where, how, and when, autism, spectrums of autism discussion. And then the third session would include most of the questions that you all have asked as registrants, so we'll include that apart from other questions that we've seen that people would like to know more. So that's how our session will go. We do thank Vendorship Inc. for sponsoring. They are umbrella sponsor for the last 1.5 years. So thank you, Vendorship Inc. Tiffany, I want to start with you with the general questions. Yeah. So if you had to give every human being one quality, what would it be and why?
Compassion. And because I think right now there's not a lot of understanding and respect of other people's opinions, whatever it may be. But I think if we have compassion and we understand that we're all coming to this place we are right now in our lives from our experiences, and those experiences define us, and that's our culture, that's our, aptitudes, that's our, neurodiverse brain, or, all that stuff really comes together to make you who you are. And we're compassionate with each other. We embrace that about each other. And it would really break down a whole lot of these barriers that just really don't need to be there.
Oh, awesome. Thank you. And Tiffany, I'm also on a board for Compassionate Atlanta.
Oh.
So every time I hear the word compassion, I feel like, okay, I'm in the right place and I need to do more for that organization.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah,
and I didn't know that, so
yes,
I wasn't cheating. Just kidding.
Compassionate Atlanta is something you should look up. And then, Praveen, I have this question for you. What is one thing you wish your parents had said to you growing up?
My parents?
Yes.
Maybe like more broad-minded, because I was born and brought up in a very small town in India. So until I came to US and I came to know about a special needs world, I was not this broad thinking before.
Okay, sounds good. Broad-minded is always good, and I hope we are teaching that to our children now. So thank you, Praveen. So Megan, before I go to Geetika, Megan, when were you the happiest?
Oh, wow. In my whole life?
Anything that stands out?
I'll use a recent example. My family always makes me very happy, but we also are very active in outdoors and we travel a lot. And I recently went to Iceland, and they opened up for US citizens, and I've been chasing the Northern Lights for years, and I've been where they should be happening and they've never happened. But I took this last minute trip to Iceland and I finally saw the Northern Lights a couple of weeks ago, and it was amazing. I was so happy. I'm still happy about it.
Oh, that's nice. Very nice. Good to know. Jessica, who's someone you admire and respect, and why? You're on mute. Can you unmute, please?
Thank you, Nazeera. Good morning again. That's a great question. And I have the opportunity to work with a lot of different leaders. I have to say, and I'm sorry that he's standing here because I don't want him to think I'm doing it just for him, but my husband is someone who I greatly admire and appreciate, although I'm sure all of us have the experience of our spouses not feeling that way sometimes. And the reason, one specific reason, aside just loving him very much, is that he is a person who tells me the truth even when I don't want to hear it, even when I don't appreciate it. And I think that has helped me. Part of my job sometimes is telling people things they don't like to hear. And to have a person who believes in you but still tells you things you don't want to hear, I think is a great gift. So that's
always nice. Oh my gosh. And with a supportive companion or a partner, you could fly so much higher. So great that you brought this point this morning, Jessica. So JV, what surprised you most in your career, or what challenges did you encounter that was really a surprise?
A lot of the times we assume things, but when you ask questions, things change a lot. For example, in my career, I was doing software engineering, and then one day, or maybe after 5 years, actually, I approached my manager. I said, I want to do something different. Then I said, I want to do product management, program management. And he said, my manager said, Tim, he said, I was going to offer you that, but I expected you to ask me that question. So I'm glad you asked me. So it's most people see what you do, and it's up to you to grab the opportunity, or if you have to ask the person, there's a chance that you might get it. So always ask questions, don't assume. That's my learning. The challenge is, um, I know that I can do stuff, but when you go through adversity, I mean, that's when you find the best out of you. At least for me, I can't talk about everybody else, but I find that when I'm pushed against the wall, I do my best and I thrive. So all I can say is I think we are capable of doing more than what we think we can. So you just need to do it. It may not be easy. You might feel difficulties, at least at the beginning, but you keep at it and keep going, it will happen. So that's all I can tell about challenge. Yeah.
A very important point you brought up, JV, is something that I believe deeply into. So it's always about asking questions, right? And the answer the worst thing is they're going to say no, right? But at
Exactly.
least you feel not guilty for not asking and not knowing. So thank you for bringing that up. Rupa, the question for you is, what is one thing that culture has taught you and you have never questioned it?
You know, I think one common theme I see among all cultures is family and the importance of family. Um, I think in the Indian culture, I can say I grew up here. I'm from Georgia, but my parents are from India, and family has always been a hallmark, has been core. And I think as I am getting older, as my children are getting older, and especially knowing more about my son's needs, I truly value family now. And I think that it's so important to be close and understand that value. So to
Very
me, I think
nice.
that's very important.
Very nice. And whoever said you were growing older? You look much younger. So, Geetika, the question for you is, what was your first win that made you confident that you were doing the right thing?
Oh gosh. I don't know how many years back should I go, but I would say my first win literally was in my graduate school when I had no idea what I wanted to do. And I was in my PhD program. I had fought tooth and nail to, come all the way from India to US and find myself not knowing what I wanted to do. So clearly no way, I couldn't turn back. But I know as part of one of my practicums, I used to work for a family. They had a child on the spectrum, and I was a behavior therapist. And I know the first time this child uttered a sound, that moment always sticks with me. And I think I knew that, okay, whatever, I had no idea where this is going to go, but this is what I want to do. And that win has it always has motivated me that if my heart is in the right place and I have done everything in my capacity, and I have kept family as my allies, we'll make it through. And that win has always carried me through.
Very nice. And we all find some, we call it the spark or the light through the tunnel, right? That helps us keep going. And we realize that's us and that's where we belong. So thank you, Geetika, for that great example. So Megan, I want to start the questions with you, right? So as I was picking up the topic, Ashwini and me were picking up the topic for this about autism. Ashwini mentioned that you wanted to make sure the title had neurodiversity on it. Yeah. And so for people like me who are not too much into this, or it's not an everyday topic of discussion, but can you, and that's the reason I want us to start so everybody who's listening also understands neurodiversity versus autism. But I want to ask first, what is neurodiversity, please?
So I think everybody has a different definition of what this means to them, and I certainly don't want to speak for a group of people. I believe that the word neurodiversity is becoming popular in the business community as a way to help others understand that diversity of thought is really included in how do we diversify our business community and our social circles and the way we think about things. And so my interpretation is probably along those lines. Some people prefer it, other people don't prefer it. And so I think it's a sort of person by person issue. For the purposes of this talk, the reason that I wanted to make sure it was in the title is because it is inclusive. And it does help people understand that there is a spectrum of the way we think. And I forget which panelist spoke to this point, but that's sort of the point of all of this, is that we broaden our horizons to understand that differences are unseen as well.
Awesome. So neurodiversity was also coined by an Australian author back in 1988, but became more commonly used after a publication in the Atlantic by Harvey Bloom, right, in 1998. And then, so does the word neurodiversity bring more positive? I know you said inclusive, but does it also bring a positive inclusion, and not as a disabled, but sort of a abled in different abilities?
Absolutely. I absolutely believe that's true. I think that when we reframe how we look at the issue of neurodiversity as a different ability rather than a disability, we do everybody a service in that capacity. These issues that we talk about so broadly, you can kind of get lost in the verbiage of how do we talk about it or what do we say, but it really comes down to how do we think about each other. And if we think positively about each other, we open doors instead of thinking about the can'ts and things that close doors. And so I like it in that capacity.
Very well said. Thank you for bringing those thoughts out as well this morning. Tiffany, let's talk about autism and spectrums of autism, right? And obviously, we call it the spectrums of autism because of varied degrees of, the autism or the disability or the disorder, if I may. But can you tell us what is autism, just for the viewers who are like everyday people who don't get into this subject much often?
Yeah. I mean, autism is a non-visible cognitive difference. It's usually marked by impaired social communication abilities. So that really much sums it up. We have a lot of symptoms that may come along with autism, such as repetitive behaviors, delayed speech, occupational therapy or occupational needs, so sensory needs. They're symptoms of it, but not necessarily truly what autism is. The catch with autism itself, and what adds to the complexity, is that there are so many co-occurring conditions that are associated with autism that are not necessarily there, but sometimes living in an autistic body will cause some of these symptoms like anxiety to come out. A big one is anxiety that a lot of individuals who are autistic have a struggle with. And anxiety itself is not part of autism. And also ADHD is something that I think 67 or more % of individuals who are autistic also are challenged with ADHD. So you put these conditions together and these challenges, it's very hard for individuals to understand where an autistic diagnosis or autistic identity separates from the person, the individual, and all those other things that are going on. So that really adds to the confusion. I know people choose to use sometimes the functioning word. It's actually considered very negative in the community to say someone's high level functioning, low level functioning, they don't function right. And they always say like someone's high or low functioning, but we always look back to it is the PhD who in neuroscience who's nonverbal low functioning just because the individual can't speak. Speech is just one aspect of communication. It's one aspect of an individual. So I'm high functioning because I'm a neuroscientist in many levels of my life. I just happen to be low speaking. So why are you going to put that in that? So it's taking away people's functioning on what we as society are comfortable seeing and saying this person functions low because it's not something I'm used to dealing with. I'm used to communicating with somebody who's not verbal. I'm not used to communicating with somebody who doesn't give me feedback on how good they are. And they don't give me feedback on how good I am. They're just talking and they're being realistic to the situation and they're not sugarcoating things. Does that make them low functioning in social interaction? It just means that they are different. So that's why autism is very complicated. And it just continues to be more as we see people in their 30s and 40s who are getting diagnosed and have presented it differently their whole lives.
Wow. So recently, Elon Musk talked about Asperger's syndrome. So, so can you tell us, so is that a part of the spectrum of autism as well?
So Asperger's syndrome is actually no longer considered a diagnosis based on the DSM-5 diagnostic criteria by the APA, the Psychology Association. It was coined by a gentleman, Nazi, so there's some controversy there, named Hans Asperger. Asperger, I'm sure I'm saying it wrong. But it basically was somebody who they would consider high functioning autism, somebody who could go through society and live a relatively normal life, but they were considered quirky. And it was kind of more an acceptable thing. When that diagnosis was taken out, a lot of individuals who consider themselves Aspies or Asperger's, they felt like their identity was taken from them because people would understand that Asperger's was a more functional in society label. And now that that's gone, a lot of the Aspies feel that they've been ripped away an identity that they so closely associate with. So I say they may have taken the diagnosis officially away, but I think you can't take away that identity that a lot of people feel when it comes to Asperger's and then what they feel it communicates to the people around them.
Okay, thank you so much for letting us know that. My next question was for Geetika, but before coming to her, the reason I'm going to ask question to JV is because I know he has to leave in a few minutes. But JV, if you can talk to the importance of technology, and what you've been trying to do because of your background in technology and product development. What is that innovation or technology that exists in the neurodiversity industry or the field, please? JB, if you can unmute yourself, please. Thank you.
Yeah. I think Rupa mentioned about this, right? Augmentative communication, that's one area it's widely useful for kiddos in the spectrum. For example, my own son uses like a thing called NovaChat. It's basically looks like a tablet because he is largely nonverbal. So he uses the technology to communicate. So like, I want eat, like, he will press the button. He knows how to press the button, and as soon as he presses the button, it speaks for him, right? So that helps. That's a simple example. But what I'm really thinking this is going to go in the future is mostly in virtual reality, and artificial intelligence could play a big role in autism diagnosis, but also it's going to open up gates for some of these kiddos who are incredibly gifted with technology. So, for example, my son, like I said before, he's really good with math and science, and he's going to do really exceptionally well. Not just a regular job, exceptional job. So that's why these kiddos could become good scientists. And I hear that Einstein was diagnosed with autism. So no wonder he's a gifted scientist. Definitely technology has some of the roles that technology can play, but it's still up to the parents and the teachers and the people in the ecosystem to identify the right thing, because these kiddos, they cannot speak for themselves. So it's up to the parents to really look into, okay, my son needs this. This would probably help. Sometimes it's trial and error, but they need to be the how do you call it? They need to be the eyes and ears and for these kiddos to advocate those resources. For example, in Massachusetts, where I live, the government really provides a lot of services like that, augmented communication and stuff like that. But you need to advocate for your child to get those things. I'm not sure about Georgia and other states how that works out, but so this is where the parents and the people in the ecosystem play a big role to get the right stuff for these kiddos. I also wanted to add to what Megan and Tiffany talked about. Let's talk about Megan's the neurodiversity. For me, it means really variations in how the brain functions. For example, we may all come from different culture, or we may look different, different colors, skin and stuff, but we are all connected by the human race, right? So same thing. They are kids, but their brain function differently, and that's why we wanted to use that in a positive way as a neurodiversity, so that just because they do things differently or they think differently doesn't make them weird or they're different, but they're part of this big spectrum. So that's a positive thing, right? And then going back to Tiffany, autism is not exactly same as one. Like, my son may have some things, and Rupa's kid will have something different, right? So that's why it's a spectrum disorder. That's why, again, it up to the parents and the people in the ecosystem who are very specifically working with a particular individual with autism to decide what's best for them. So that's why it's very challenging to somehow say that come up with a cookie cutter solution to solve this. That's why it has to be individualized, very specialized, very specific to that particular individual.
Very
So that's
well
why
said.
yeah.
Thank you, JV. So what you're saying is, yes, hold on, Tiffany. So what you're saying, JV, is that there is still room for improvement in the technology and innovation world in the
Yes.
in the neurodiversity field. Okay,
Yeah,
very nice.
and then one thing I also want to add to I forgot to say is what Autism Collab is actually doing is we are using technology to collect data. For example, my son has some temper tantrums. The medication he's taking, so we are keeping track of all these things. We used to do all these in a paper trail, and it's very difficult for everybody to keep up with it. Now it's all cloud based. So the parent can enter the information, the teacher can enter the information, and they all can see what the other person entered. So it's all centralized in a single repository, and it's all digital. So it's easy to track and manage aggressions, or okay, he's doing this, or he took this medication, he did this, he went for this physical activity like swimming, hiking. So today it was less aggression. So we are using that technology to come up with different solutions to cope up with this aggression sometimes.
And what is it already in place? Is it a working website or a tool?
No, we are still in the beta. We are testing it right now.
Okay.
So our goal is to launch this within the next 3 months. But that's what we are working on right now.
Very well, very well. Thank you and congratulations, and we wish you the best. And hope there's no doubt that's going to help many. So, and have a safe trip, JV. You're welcome to log off anytime when you do have to go. Tiffany, I saw you raise your hand.
Yeah, I want to just so my kid's a little older, but I am really, really involved in the transition community and in the community. It's just neurodivergence. I run an international movement. So respectfully, I'm going to challenge all of you parents in here to not call them kiddos. I have the hardest time not calling them kiddos. But we need to refer to them as adults. As talk a lot about in my group is how you work best, how you learn best. But we need to think about them as being adults. We need to refer to them as being adults. Because of all, I mean, our children here, for all the parents here, our children are all over the place in the sense of their projections in life. But you don't know. And so if we use language that shows them more respect and doesn't childlike them, because I have I have employees that are neurodivergent, autistic, and they talk to me all the time about don't use the word tantrum because it puts me in a place of being a child, and I'm an adult. I'm having something else. Which children versus adults, it's different. But if we start changing that dialogue, we're starting to empower the people around us to look at our children differently, and it's hard. I agree it's hard, but this is how I think we're going to make some big changes so people see our kids and they see human beings that are having a challenge based on their environment. They're having a challenge because they want to communicate and they're very frustrated with communications. So if we change that dialogue, we start giving our children more respect. So I say that respectfully just because I'm in the community so much, and I know we can make a difference by what words we use.
And
so thanks for letting me.
Yeah, thanks. And that's why I think we are here learning from each other. I remember when I used to be a preceptor calling our interns kiddos, and literally they all came back to me and saying, "Guys, we're adults, like don't call us kiddos." And that's when I knew, because they told me.
I'm just trying to add on to JB that since even I was working on behalf of the technology, I always tell parents that you know what happens in the next 20 years. You see the technology in the last 20 years, and if you visualize or imagine how the technology is going to help our children, Just make your children as functional as possible to sustain or to live independently every day, and then wait for the technology to break down that will be connected to your brain, and whatever your child thinks, that is going to show up in the screen. Wait for that day. So you don't need to worry about how your child is going to live after you. Don't worry about it. Live for the 5 minutes. If you are not happy, make yourself happy for the next 5 minutes and then go celebrate your life. Don't think about disability. Think about what you're going to achieve in the next 20 years.
Very well said.
So thank you, JV, for giving us a lot of confidence. I'm going to pass this message to all our groups that see the technology is going to make a big difference for our children. See what an iPad has done for our children. See what virtual reality is going to done for our children. Thank you.
Definitely, I think you both should keep connected as well. We wish you again a safe trip, a JV for you. Yeah. So, Geetika, let's come back to you. Let's come to you. Okay. So, what are the warning signs of autism spectrum disorder? I don't know even if I should say it as a disorder. So it's like I'm feeling not good saying some words after talking to you all, being in the midst of this. So please correct me as well if I'm saying some words, or if I should not be saying some words. I would very happily accept the challenge. So Geetika, what are the warning signs that a parent should look for, or are there any top signs of autism?
Absolutely. And I'll extend Tiffany's initial description of what is autism, and when she was alluding to DSM-5. So in terms of pure diagnostics, there are 3 domains that we try to assess. A child's skill. Language is a big domain where we want to watch out for development of language. Is there any delay in appearance of first words, short sentences, being receptive? So some of the things that you might be saying to the child, responding to their own name, responding to things that suddenly change in the environment. So when you say, look, does the child pay attention, or does he divert his attention for whatever he's engaged with or she's engaged with, and then actually does they pause and look to what you just pointed to. So in terms of social communication, paying attention to some of those early signs and symptoms. I wouldn't even call it symptoms, just early signs. And just to add a little more of a personal story in there, I have a 7-month-old daughter, and as a clinician, it's really sometimes difficult to kind of distinct myself from being a mom to being a person who has been in the field for so many years. But there are days when I actually try and test and assess that what does it really look like for her at this age. So these are some of the signs to look for in terms of social communication and just being engaged with people in your environment. As the child progresses, or all of you are such inspirational parents. You're familiar with the terms like joint attention, which clinicians or therapists will introduce here and there in terms of therapeutic goals or whatnot. The other I would say just a red flag would be things like what does their motor skills look like? Do you see some kind of very focused attention to only certain toys, playing with toys that you would call as not playing appropriately? And what I mean by that, and I want to be careful, appropriate play, what that means. I think we're talking or alluding more to are you playing with the cars the way what cars would do, vroom, things like that. If you have a teacup, do you pretend, having a cup of tea and things like that, as opposed to, say, for example, just lining up those toys or just stacking them up, So these are some of the early signs to look for. As children get older and they start to go to daycare or more in a preschool setting, that's where you start to see a little more of their social skills and the social engagement. Do they approach their peers? How do they respond to when other kids come up to them to, they're interested in stuff that they have, or they're inviting them to play? How does the child respond to those, those moments of social initiations? So these are things to keep in mind. I'll also say that as Tiffany was saying, it is such a complex. It's such a complex disorder. We are all learning. I learn so much every time I read something or I see something about autism, and I think I wish there was like a checklist of things to say. Okay, here are the 10 perfect things, and if you check everything's okay, and if not, you might want to pay more attention to it. But just being aware about all those things, and also I always believe that if as a parent you feel like something's off or this doesn't look right, no matter what a clinician says, no matter what a pediatrician says, no matter what any of your therapists say, follow that instinct, because if you know something's off, more likely than not, something probably is. And an early assessment and early diagnosis and early intervention will not hurt anybody. You're only going to strengthen those skills. So that was a long answer to your question, Nazeera. And I wanted to add a little bit to Tiffany's kiddo observation. Guilty and work in progress, but I think and I think the sentiment that you shared, Tiffany, looking at I feel like there's a I am better than you are tone when sometimes I'm using things like what is the kiddos doing, or my kids, or things like that. So I know I check myself very often. Thanks for bringing that up.
Awesome, thank you. So Geetika, what is the youngest age that a child is diagnosed with ASD?
I think it's becoming younger and younger, especially with a lot of research with eye tracking, some of the things that, kids who are able to sit as young as 5, 6, 7, 8, 7 months old, they're trying to identify if you can go that early to at least, say that there might be something off or there's a red flag in there. But I know year and a half, 2 years is where you are able to if not get a formal diagnosis, but at least, be on the radar for, for a formal diagnosis down the lane. But the age of diagnosis is becoming younger and younger, which is great because, like I said, early identification is only going to lead to early intervention. And kids are such a mold at a young age that the sooner you're able to support their skills, you're able to get. Then 1 hour has a longer mileage in terms of therapy.
Very nice. Praveen, go ahead, please.
Yeah, Geetika, when you added that line about the research and the eye and everything, I just want to add here that my son was involved in one of the research recently and he was paid for that. That the research is they're trying to see the blinking of the eye, the whatever the inside the functioning of eye, so that once the child is born, they're trying to find out the diagnosis right away instead of waiting for 2 years or like 1.5 year or early childhood screening. So they are trying to see if we can diagnose because of this eye.
Right. Because children and gaze is something that is how we are able to gauge some of their interests. If they look over and only look at your phone, that they want the phone. Yeah. Or they just look over and watch that dog which just started barking. That's where their attention is drawn to. So I feel like that's almost like the first visible behavior of I'm interested, I'm not interested, that catches my attention, this doesn't catch my attention, where their motor movement is so floppy and all over the place, and their motor area is still developing. Eye gaze, I feel, is a very good indication when we know that they're engaged or they're not engaged. And thanks for bringing that up, Praveen. And I also say that they're trying to, there's a lot of work that's going on to see if these assessment devices can be made part of, regular sort of, diagnostic assessment machine in a doctor's office, where if you have a concern and you go in, that they're able to do a quick assessment. And like I said, 2 years might be 2 years too late if you can pick it up early. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks for all the information.
Geetika, what that will help is like once the child is diagnosed right away, as early as possible, the toys you buy, the room you set up, the people, how they communicate with the child, it will all change. And by the time they go to school, nobody knows whether the child has disability or autism. What are all the technical words people use?
Yes.
Like, I dream of the one word in the future that slow learner. Slow learner would be the best possible replacing word for any disabilities in the world in the future. That is my dream before I die.
Yeah. And Praveen, I also feel that, when a parent, with that early diagnosis, I feel the parents will get so empowered, because there's nothing more frustrating than having a child that you're not able to connect with, or you don't know how to, how to keep them happy, how to build a skill, how to teach them, and, to have months after months of having that frustration. So think about yourself as a parent, you start to feel so defeated. You feel that it's just, there's also a learning history which gets built up, where there's a lot of aversion, in engaging with your child. So I agree with everything you say, Praveen.
Tiffany, next question is going to be for Rupa, but Tiffany, can you please introduce?
Oh, come here, honey. This is my son Jake. He's off to work at Target. Come here, buddy. This is a
The one who
live
finished
panel.
college, the one Jake is just finished. Jake, did you just?
What? Tell them where you're at school. I'm at Chapman University. I'm a freshman. Well, actually, was a freshman yesterday. I'm a sophomore now.
Very nice, Jake. So you're heading to Target right now?
In a couple minutes. Yeah, I just want to say hi to Mom.
Oh wow! And we are so thrilled to see you here as well. It's so great to talk to you, Jake. Is there anything you would like to tell this panel? We are talking about autism. Or the listeners who are listening.
Sorry.
No, that's fine. No, but it was great. It was great.
Maybe I'll think of something for next time. But for now, I gotta go.
Yes, next time we're going to have you on the panel sit next to your moms. But all the best, Jake. And
next time we'll have you on the panels for next year. All right, bye.
Bye. Thank you, Jake. That was really nice, Tiffany. Thank you for enlightening all of us.
He's kind of the Zoom bomber for me of all my conferences. I'm like, he's my inspiration. He's the reason I am where I'm at. So it's good to meet him. So sorry about that, whoever was talking.
No, that's fine. That was good to know. Thank you, Tiffany, for introducing. Rupa, my question is for you next, and then we go to Jessica, and then Praveen, I'm coming to you after Jessica. So Rupa, now we all talked about some of the signs, the early warning signs and all that. So now let's say a mom is saying, hey, my child is showing some of these symptoms. Does it mean anything to her at that point?
I think as a parent and having fellow parents here on the panel who've been through this journey with me, my son is my first. So, 10 years ago, my son was diagnosed right around 3, but actually 12 years ago, I saw that there was a difference between him and his 1-year-old peers. And it's a scary moment for a parent because you're not sure if, they'll just eventually develop those skills over time, or is it truly something that you need to get looked at? And even to go to the doctor to talk about it and face what they may say, that's a very scary feeling for parents, especially, at least for me it was, because he was my first and I really didn't know what to expect. And so if looking back at that time, I think that parents, we are our child's advocate, and I think that we know our children best. And if there's ever a doubt, it's always better to go and get it checked out and get the information. I believe knowledge is power. And 10 years after my son's diagnosis, the one thing I feel very happy about is I know my son and I'm able to ask the right questions and I'm able to learn about what supports he needs. And I now feel more confident as a parent to know where, how do I need to be the best parent I can for him. So I think that question you asked about, now there may be something that's off. Where do I go from here? It's so important that parents speak up and they ask questions and they get their child the help that they need. And no matter how uncertain that may be, no matter what information that they get, it really helps to know and get that information. So that would be my one thing there. But yes, I think it's very important. And I will also say one more thing.
Yes.
Getting the information, there's many therapies out there. I will also relay it to my own personal experience with communication because that's a big thing for my son. And when he was younger, I thought that by exposing him to an augmentative communication device on an iPad, he uses an app to communicate. I thought that that would take away from his verbal skills to communicate. What I've actually found is quite the opposite. He's so much more independent, confident. He can have multiple communication partners. And I see him happier now that he can communicate. So I felt so happy that I took that step to have the conversations, get the information that I need, and I was truly able to help him. So I think as a parent, we need to know our children, and when we feel like something is off, we can make a world of difference by asking questions and
Very well
doing
said.
something.
Very well said, Rupa. Thank you. Jessica, my next question is to you, right? And I think before the session started, Geetika and I were discussing way back, even when I was doing medical school, I mean, we didn't learn in detail about these, autism or neurodiversity. And so when a mother notices something, the warning signs, she goes to her pediatrician, right? Or she talks to her, or he or she talks to her pediatrician. And then, is that the right way to go? Or because we just thought that sometimes pediatricians don't have these subject knowledge in detail. So should they refer them to the mother, to the developmental pediatricians? Like, how can you just help us with the flow so the early detection is possible?
Thank you, Nazeera. And I will say that this is a great conversation because, as someone said earlier, many of us have gone down this journey in different paths, probably. And I can speak to my journey with our son Daniel. So yes, we frankly knew. And I have an older stepson who also has autism, and who needs more support than Daniel does. But the in my experience, I happen to have I'm very blessed and grateful to have very excellent health benefits through my job. And that is something that some parents do not have. But I was able to get a referral to a developmental pediatrician, and that is how we received our formal diagnosis. And it was, in our case, covered by insurance. And Daniel was actually formally diagnosed at 4. But I will say that even in Atlanta, which is a big city with a lot of hospitals and a lot of resources, the first developmental pediatrician I looked at had a almost an 8-month waiting list. And just for a first appointment, there are other developmental pediatricians who choose not to take health insurance at all. And so it can be a very costly journey for parents, unfortunately. And that's a place where a lot of advocacy work has taken place to make sure there is that some of those diagnostic expenses are covered or required to be covered. So if a person can't afford the thousands of dollars it takes, a barrier. In my experience, again, Daniel, after he began public school and he goes to the Atlanta public school system, he went through, it helped me, having that formal diagnosis helped me advocate for him to be in an autism classroom when he began school. And then he went through another kind of battery of tests in the school system through the school psychologist program. But I do think the pediatrician, I think that there has been a tremendous growth in awareness of autism, thanks to parents like all the people on this call and others. And I do believe that most pediatricians, in my experience, if they can't make the diagnosis themselves, they are aware of the need. And I will say, as I mentioned, I do some volunteer work with Autism Speaks. They do also have resources to make those referrals and things like that. But there has been a lot of advocacy over the last probably 10 years to ensure that that these diagnoses are covered by more insurance plans in more states.
Very, very important and vital information you shared there, Jessica. Among all the tension added, seems to be that's one more added tension for parents. Go ahead, Geetika, and then I have the questions for Praveen next.
Jessica, thanks for sharing that. To that, I'll add, especially for some of you viewers in other countries where insurance may not be the one, calling a lot of shots on what's the first person you go to, etc. What I've learned in my practice in Bangalore is that in other countries you might have other professionals who are trained and are able to make a formal assessment and a formal diagnosis. In addition to developmental pediatrician and psychologists that Jessica was saying, speech therapists are also trained good speech therapists are also a good resource to seek, and individuals that you might be able to get some assessments from. In some places, social workers, maybe not a formal diagnosis, but I think a good resource, people to at least help you understand how to go about a formal diagnostics. So everything that Jessica says is very valuable. Sometimes it can get very difficult to access quick diagnostics, but then that's where if you widen the pool to see who can make a formal diagnosis, and then starting the journey there. Also, in some states, they have centers of excellence where where you're able to go, and they tend to roll through their appointments and their wait lists reasonably quickly. Of course, reasonable is a broad term, but 8 months, Jessica, sounds like something that I'm quite used to hearing that 1 year plus is more often. But I just wanted to put in that thought as well.
Yes, definitely, because we do have people from other countries listening in. So thank you, Geetika. Praveen, my next question is for you. So now, as we are still continuing to talk about the diagnosis, so I believe there's no blood test or a brain scan or any objective screening, but can you tell us, so it requires a multidisciplinary team to diagnose. Can you tell us more about that, please?
Yeah, I can talk about a parent perspective because we have gone through that journey. So usually what happens is like there will be three types of parents. One is a concerned parent, and a confused parent, and a complicated parent. So if you are a concerned parent, what you will do is, oh, my child is not giving me eye contact, my child doesn't have the joint attention, my child is not doing the finger pointing, and let me go and talk to the doctor. So the doctor will understand. If he's a kind-hearted doctor and he has more time for it depends on the doctor too. So, oh yeah, we need to help the child, so let us take to the developmental pediatrician. Or if they don't have access to the developmental pediatrician, the pediatrician will say, okay, we have some concerns, so why don't you try these toys, book reading, spend more time as parents and all the family, and try to understand that your child is going on something in a different way, so try to help them. So if you are a confused parent, what happens? You will try for oh no, this is not autism, oh this is autism, and then they Google it. Once they Google it, you know what happens in Google, you'll get millions of pages. So what happens then? You'll get into a technical trap. Is this autism? Is this ASD? What is ASD? What is PDD? And then you will get into an emotional trap. That leads to depression. That doesn't solve the problem. And there is one more complicated parent. Complicated parent is the whole family saying, oh, we don't have this problem in our family before. It might be a problem in your maternal, your side, mom's side, dad's side, they will fight. And that will lead to more and more complications. So I suggest any parent that if you spend more time with your child in terms of positive development, if you find any concern, go and talk to the pediatrician, go for the second opinion, take an appointment with developmental pediatrician, and don't wait that doctor is going to come as say a word of autism or so. No, we don't need the words. We need to understand that a child is born in your family for help and support. Mother Nature and God and the child have decided that you are the best mom and dad for the child. Once you decide that, buy a few books. If you are like rich person, go and buy an iPad or a Samsung tab, download some apps, more interactive apps for the child, and put the YouTube videos, play some songs, try to interact, do the rhymes, try to play like bubbles, balloons. There's so much of interactive play. So after 6 months, the child will understand that, wow, my mom is playing with me. My dad is playing with me. My mom and dad understood my condition. So I'm so lucky to born in this family. So after like once the child grows 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, they'll get ready emotionally for the school also. Don't worry about, oh, my child cannot do this much. No, everybody has a disability in the world. Nazeera cannot do like Rupa. Rupa cannot do like Tiffany. So we are all different. So every kid is different, every family is different, every financial situation is different. So consider what you have, take things as a positive way, and try to help your child. Take the help from the resources, like you can take the help of the professionals, and then go ahead with what you have in your hand. And then once the diagnosis or whatever it is, I don't worry about the diagnosis. Diagnosis makes you like a stop. Like you don't need to go anywhere from there. But you need to help your child from the day one. You have a concern, whatever the concern is. Yeah. So I'll tell you one simple example, Nazeera.
Yes.
I have a mom who lives in Chennai. She is a vegetable seller. She goes to house in a cart, and she has a child with autism, and she doesn't know what is autism. She contacted someone in the neighborhood, and they said like there is a group you can contact. So she bought a phone on a loan, and then she downloaded Facebook Messenger, and then she called, and she cried for 30 minutes. I said, Revati, you'll be fine. I will help you. Don't worry. And then I sent her to a place. I think her name is Irfana Banu in Chennai. And Irfana Banu invited her and showed how the house looked like for a child with autism, how the visual friendly environment, how play friendly environment, how interactive friendly environment is there. And then she took all the notes. She went back. She has a very small house. She built a small hut on top of the roof. She made that room as a therapy room. Since she is a vegetable seller, she started teaching her with vegetables. After 2 years, he understood what are the numbers, what are the colors, what are the shapes, what are the things which is in terms of fruits and vegetables, because their environment. So always look for your environment and don't look for like what happens to me tomorrow, what happens to me, what happens to my child after a day. Don't worry about all those things.
Very nice. I'm sorry. Sometimes I get sensitive to some of the emotional touching points. So Praveen, let's talk about, so because having coming from India myself, I know how some of the grandparents get involved, the grandparents, the aunties and uncles get involved. And I know sometimes it takes a negative route for the reason because they come with some superstition. So I know even for those illnesses that could have been treated, they just leave them as mental. So I've heard the word mental again and again. And this is just for Jessica and Tiffany and Megan. I don't know if that happens here. I doubt it. But in India, they call them mental. That means he's or something the mom and dad did, and so now the karma is coming back to hurt them with this child. So I've heard that in the past. Or if they take them to this god, to the temple or a mosque and have a priest, the ghost will an obsessed outside obsession would come out of their spirit and they'll become normal. So that delays the real understanding of what this treatment is. So how do you deal with those parents or grandparents, Praveen? Now that the reason I'm asking only you this specific question is because I know your group has 10,000 people in it, and I'm sure they'll be telling you this, what happens back there. So what do you say to those that are unnecessary steps? Though I know, I respect the sensitivity and superstition and religious norms, but this is something that has to be diagnosed and taken care of. So how do you interpret that, and what is that message you give them?
Oh, is this a question for me?
Yes, Praveen. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, first I always understand their personal situation. I don't give them suggestions or ideas right away. First, let them talk. I give my shoulder to them to make them, like, they want to cry, let them cry, and let them tell what they want. Sometimes I don't even listen. Might be in the meetings because it's the same story. Sir, my son is diagnosed. We have this situation. We went to therapies. Nothing is working. No speech. So I always say that, okay, let's take, like, we all need support, we need encouragement, we need to feel like what we are not following, even though the signs of improvement are nowhere in sight. We need someone to listen. So I'm there for listening for the parents who really need help. Someone call me sir, someone call me brother, someone call me whatever they want. But the only thing is, we are all in the same ocean with different boats with different pain, but towards the journey of somewhere our child will live independently in the future. That is the only goal we all have.
Okay.
So I always tell them that no explanation needed, no judgment, just someone who understands. You don't need to expect that your husband understands you, your family understands you. There are people in the world, like, see, we are all, nobody knows where we are born and brought up, but now we are all connected together. So God knows how to connect the dots, and He knows where your child belongs to and where the child will go. So I will tell all the positive things, and I will tell them that God cannot fix this issue because He asked us to take care of the kid. God has nothing to do with it. Your religion has nothing to do with your parenting, your fitness, your health style, your caste, your religion. Nothing has to do with the child. There are so many programs in software, and in that software there are so many bugs. Like that, thousands, millions, and millions of children are born in this planet, and there are so many issues going on. Nobody knows. And I will tell them an example. Don't try to fix it, because I'll tell them always an example. If you want to find a spelling mistake in a word, it is very easy if you find a single word. If that word is in a page, it's easy. Once you read the page, you can find it. If that word is in a book, it will take 2 or 3 days to find out. If that word is in a small bookshelf, which has like 50 to 60 books, it will take like 1 year to find that. If that book is in millions and millions and millions and millions of volumes in a British library, is it possible to find the spelling mistake? No. If you got it and if you found a solution, there is one more kid who has one more spelling mistake, and you have to go back again. So don't worry about why, when, what, where. Always think about how to help your child. You don't need to buy the toys, just giving him a hug. Just water is enough to play with the child. So don't worry about what you have, be positive, like just hold on first. So you are not alone, don't give up, don't take any bad or hasty decisions. That is not going to work, because even though you die, you suicide, you have to born again for that child. You don't know that.
Yeah.
We are all born for the children only. Anybody can become a mother in 9 months, anybody can become a father in 5 minutes. But becoming a special mother or a special father is a blessing. God has chosen you for the war on autism or war on disability. You do it. Some soldiers are born for protecting their country. Bill Gates is born to create Microsoft. So like that, you are chosen by God.
Definitely, very well said, Praveen.
So I always tell them, and then I tell that you might be tired, but don't worry. I know how you feel, because my wife I feel. We are all feeling in the same way. Take a break, go wash your face. If you want to cry, cry. Watch a movie, eat food, talk to your friends, come out of it and start working again.
Very well said. You're basically saying focus on the child, and even a big hug also helps. So thank you so much, Praveen. Megan, thank you for your patience. Megan, the question I have for you is, and then I'll come to Tiffany right after Megan. How important is an early diagnosis of autism? And why?
I think it's very important. I work more in the adult space. Previously, I worked in the pediatric space. But I think it's important so that you can make goals. And so, to Praveen's point about, we're not fixing, we're accommodating, and we're educating the people who are in the ecosystem, who are in the path, and making sure that everybody understands possibilities versus disability. One of the things that we say at Parallels, we lead with pretty radical empathy. And that looks different everywhere. And so that looks different here in the United States versus India, versus China. Families look differently. Acceptance is different everywhere, but the common goal is we all want a more accepting society, and we all want opportunity presented at an equal rate. And we're all looking for how can we create independent futures for people who have very amazing abilities. And so, when we look back to how important is a diagnosis at a young age, that's different for everyone. Tiffany, I think at some point put in the chat bot or the chat box that there are adults who self-identify after years of not understanding their differences, but also in some other parts of the world, that's an access issue. And so if you don't have access, you have to move into action. And so I love Praveen's example of, well, okay, I'm going to go get an iPhone and I'm going to FaceTime with someone. I'm going to figure this out. And I think it's the resolve of individuals who are reflecting on their differences and the ecosystem of support coming together and saying, okay, we can figure this out. This is not insurmountable. It's different. I think we have a little bit of bias in the United States of, oh, well, you go to the doctor and you get your diagnosis and then you check. And that sounds really easy, especially in a place like Atlanta. Jessica mentioned how many resources we have here. It's amazingly easy here. But then we go to somebody who has low to no resources and little awareness for what to do, and the metrics change. How do we move the needle in both situations and respect each other and say, okay, having an early diagnosis is important, but it looks differently for me here in Atlanta versus somebody selling vegetables in Chennai versus somebody where it's a very taboo subject. And so I think when we talk about these things with each other, having respect of understanding, it's going to look really different. Because I do work with people in many different countries and cultures, it looks radically different. And so understanding that the starting point is super, if we were to draw this out, some people start here, some people start here, some people start here, and we have to work together instead of tearing each other down about it.
Sure. Geetika, I'm coming right back to you because I had a continuous question for Megan. Megan, are there any tests that is not recommended for the diagnosis of autism? And I can imagine, as you all are stating to me, and how we, stress over small things about kids, and then here are parents who, the diagnosis of autism is given, and their whole navigation of life changes. Misunderstandings between the spouses, and what are they going to do next. So have you seen that parents have actually waited to take a child for testing for autism so that they don't want to get into that uncertainty immediately? Or
I've seen that happen before. It kind of goes back to that radical empathy. You have to lean on that when you meet that. If somebody comes to you and there are obvious signs that have been disregarded, and let's say, for instance, a parent comes to you with a 16-year-old, older child, and they've just kind of come to terms with everything, you have to meet them where they're at. This isn't about chastising people or telling them you should have done this or you could have done this. That's, water under the bridge. You have to, or you don't have to, you can do what you want to do, but for us at Parallel, we meet people where they're at and we say, okay, well, this is where you are. And some people say, this is off the table, this is off the table, this is off the table. Fine. You have to resource the journey for people as they're willing to accept, I will do those things. And so we do a disservice to our whole community by saying you had to do these therapies, or you had to do these interventions, or you had to do these tests, because sometimes that's not possible for a myriad of reasons.
Yes. Go ahead, Geetika, and then I'm heading to Tiffany for the next question.
There you go. I had a follow-up thought for both Praveen and what Megan was saying. and I was writing some notes as both of you guys were talking. To diagnosis, one thing I tell parents a lot of time, and there's a lot of anxiety about getting a diagnosis, and that also speaks to what we as clinicians have been trained as the purpose of a label. And I can understand that parents want to know what is really going on, but then I always ask them, okay, what happens next? Does it really change that if your child had autism or did not have an autism? Would it really change how worried or concerned you are about their language? So I think giving that perspective that yes, sometimes having a diagnosis might help because it helps you communicate with other people. It helps you see communities or groups because now you kind of have an understanding of what might be going on. But then the larger goal of what Praveen was talking about doesn't change. You still have to work towards skill building. You have to work towards independence. You have to work towards functional skills, and irrespective of what that diagnosis or label may or may not be. The other thing, when you were asking about tests not recommended, I think there are probably like 500 plus therapies, and I think there's probably equal number of tests and assessments and checklists that we can all find. And Tiffany was sharing that a lot of people are also self-diagnosing. So when you're in this, when you're flooded with information, I think being that advocate for the parent and just to help them flush out that pool of information and just helping them guide to a right source or to a valid source, and not just giving them a research article, but trying to either help them, giving them a summary or helping them through in some of their research is important. And in Bangalore, when I would have families who would come in with they've tried homeopathy, they've tried spiritual leader, they've picked the auspicious day to come and visit me, and they've picked an auspicious time to start the therapy. To me, the fact that they're in an ABA-based school seeking therapy is the only win I want to focus on, because they really did make an effort to be there, irrespective of or in addition to all the other things that were going on. And what I want to do is just be with them, and that might mean listening to what they're saying, respecting their choices, because we all have our life stories, and just being that ally, because I want to be the last person who says and challenges their religious belief, because then I've just lost them, and then I have lost that opportunity to empower my parent. And one thing that I've learned, I was trained in US, I have a very Western thinking, and one thing that I've learned practicing in India is how to work and be empathic. And sometimes being out of your comfort zone, where it may not be evidence-based, it may not be research, but there are people and their family and their family dynamics and then their cultural variables, and always to have that lens when you're interacting with their family. So to me, the fact that a family has walked in to my school is the win. And from there, I'm like, I want to make sure that you never ever leave because of something I did. You leave for your own reasons, but I want to make sure that when you're there, I was as supportive to you as possible, and I provided all resources for you. So those are, just a couple of thoughts I wanted to add.
Very well said, Ashwini. I think you and Megan shared the same thoughts about respecting with whatever thoughts they're coming. But I also wanted to make sure that the parents have the freedom to choose the medical aspect as well. And sometimes we have in-laws, and so there's several dynamics, right? So I want to make sure the parents are empowered and encouraged that there is interventions available, and with courageously to go forward with those interventions rather than staying back. So Praveen, 10-15 seconds, and then I have to come to Tiffany, although she's going to be mad at me.
I just want to add, I want to support the statement from Megan and Geetika. Just like I want to add two lines. Whenever a parent calls or a parent is concerned, don't worry about the age. It's always like we have to understand three core things. What are the areas child is looking for help? What are the areas child is having trouble to understand this environment? As a parent, what are your concerns? And then try to understand the child's interest, the likes, dislikes, strengths, weaknesses, daily living style. And then make a plan for yourself that what you want to do to the child. and then go to the therapist, go to the teacher, tell like what your concern is, and make as a team, make the plan, which is mutually both agreement for both parents, and then start working, and you'll see more positive results.
Very nice. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Praveen. Very well said, those core 3 points. Tiffany, let's talk about the causes of autism. Yeah. If you can briefly or sort of in detail tell us what are the causes, and how can a parent find the cause, or is it important to find the cause?
There is no one knows really when it comes down to it. I mean, I could give you theories of genetics, theories of this, theories of environment. I'm an organizational psychologist, so this might be better for Geeta. So we don't know. And, for my family, my son has autism, my daughter has ADHD. I have 2 nephews with autism, and on my side, on my husband's side, we probably have 5 or 6 with some form of ADD, ADHD combination. So that makes me think it's a kind of a genetic thing, but I also think it's an environmental thing. So there's a whole saying kind of about disabilities in general, is you're not disabled till you're put into an environment that puts you in the state of being disabled. So have we just been putting people in environments where we don't enable them to be themselves? It doesn't fit who they are. And I think that's a lot of what happens. I do have to add to a lot of those other conversations.
Yes, please do. Yes.
Sorry, because I can't answer your question. I don't know why. First of all, Praveen, I admire your passion. You're bringing tears to my eyes because, as parents, it's hard. It is really hard. And when my son was diagnosed on a Thursday, when he was 2 years, 4 months, and I was just had my baby, Sarah, because I was on bed rest during the whole process. They started a parent support group at a place we got diagnosed at, and within the first couple weeks, we learned about going through the grieving process. And no matter how hard you want to be like, I love my kid, whatever else, you have to grieve because you, in your mind, are always going to put what you know as childhood and successes assigned to your child. I mean, you can't not do it. It's just human nature. But we learned to just kind of accept that we were allowed to grieve the fact that our child was not going to have an easy life because the world was not made for him. And I think that was, the helpful thing for us to do so we could, put on our big girl boy pants and engage and do what we needed to do for Jake. But it was hard. And I'll be honest, you guys could probably tell I'm a little bit of a type A personality. I dove in so hard. I wanted to fix this. I wanted to fix this so badly. What can I do? Whatever therapy we need to do. I ran around everywhere. We did everything we could do for Jake. And it was great. I got involved in the community. I did everything. Until I had completely exhausted myself, where I was having panic attacks. I was having anxiety attacks. That whole system crawled up into it, and I had to go into a hospital. Because I had pushed myself so hard to make everything as right as I could to make Jake better. And, this was back in 2004 or 2005. And, it was a very sad point in my life. Because I just, wanted so badly to do everything I could and not be the one that got in the way of Jake's success. And it made me really have to take care of myself. So if I didn't take care of myself, I can't take care of my kids. It was very, very hard. And it's, very, I've been trying to be vulnerable to share with people that, I'm in a different stage now, I'm empowered, but I really did hit a low. So when I talk to parents, I tell them to grieve. I tell them it's okay, we all have things, and there's culture stuff, and it's hard on marriages. There's so many people that divorce because of this, and because people don't understand the way they look. It's hard a lot of times on men to have their sons. My husband was a jock. Jake could care less about sports. It's hard to do those things that are different, and hard for your children sometimes not to have anything that you can relate with them. And so it is hard as a parent. So take care of yourself. And it's so great to hear these support groups, but also love your child. Respect the people that work in the communities with them. I got more for my child by being respectful for the people working with him because they respected me back, and we had conversations and we listened, and it wasn't coming in like fighting for them. I mean, we had parents that would come into things and say, okay, how many hours of behavioral did the district give you? Oh, I only got 4 and you got 5. Okay, I'm going after them. How many hours of speech did you get? No. I only got 1. I'm going to go back and get more. This is it. I'm calling my lawyer. And I'm like, how many hours does your kid need? You know what? I would prefer if Jake didn't need 4 hours of speech in a week and 6 hours of behavioral or whatever else it is, because now he's in school all day and we're in the car all day doing all this stuff. What's best for your kid? Don't compare it with mine, because every kid is different. Every situation is different. And there was so much of that. It was really a hard life. So as I'm in this age now where we're transitioning, and I'm seeing all these parents who have worked their tail off like all of you guys, all these kids who have put their grit, meaning their hard work and perseverance, and then they find their flow, which is the thing they love to do, as GD was talking about. You find what you do, and you find a job to matches it, and that's what we're trying to do now, because we have all these people who work their tails off to enter adulthood. And there's a saying called graduating to the couch. No, it's not okay. So what are we going to do about it? We're going to have to empower them. But as parents, you have to make sure you're taking care of yourself, because it doesn't just stop at 18. It doesn't stop at 20. It doesn't stop at 22. You know, it's hard. So I mean, I guess I have a bit of a rant on all of it, but I do want you guys to understand that it's a journey. In every situation. I mean, we just finished our first year of COVID college, you know. It wasn't easy. It was really hard, and the mood swings and the ups and downs and being stuck in his room and all this new thing, but it was hard. And that's, you know, for most kids. But then you add the complexity of having a neurodivergent child who has different ways of learning, and the system wasn't prepared to give him multi ways to learn. And he's still figuring out what those ways are that he needs to learn in college, so he can't advocate for himself being online. It was a crappy situation. So, you know, it was a crappy year, but we made it.
Yeah, definitely, Tiffany, and thank you so much. Yeah, no, definitely kudos to you for
inspiring
many more. Rupa, I did see you raise your hand, and the question was also for you. We do see, you know, the statistics for autism climbing high, and I'm thinking, or might be the research is that more are getting diagnosed. Maybe is that the reason? But also, please follow up with your thoughts as well, Rupa.
Sure. So I think, as the panel has alluded to, we're getting to know more about autism as the years progress. And I think that how autism is diagnosed is also changing. It's truly a spectrum that's broadening. So I think that might also lead to the diagnosis rate. But one thing I heard from all the panelists that I just wanted to reiterate is to not focus so much on the diagnosis, but getting your child the help that they need, so they can be as independent as possible, they have the best quality of life possible, and helping them advocate for themselves. I really like the point that Tiffany made, which is why I raised my hand. It is so important for parents to take care of themselves. And Tiffany, I truly identify with you. My son was diagnosed when my daughter was 2 weeks old. And I quit. In my previous life, I was in recruiting and talent acquisition for a number of years. I quit my job, and all I did for 5 years was therapy. I thought, the more therapies I can get in, the better the outcome. And I just pushed myself so much to get my son the help that he needed. Years later, what I found is so really helped me is to have people around you who are there to support you. Have people who are going to be kind, and people, whether it's medical professionals, counselors, families, friends, whomever. It is so important for parents to take care of themselves, not just physically, but mentally, and have people around. Communication is so important. What I found personally as a parent is the more that I started to talk about it, the better I felt. And I consider my son a blessing. I've learned so much from him. I wouldn't change one thing about him. It was a journey. I had my highs and lows, but I want parents to know this is not scary. It's only as scary as you make it. But if you empower yourself with knowledge, if you reach out and ask for help. My son was diagnosed in 2010. 11 years later, the resources are unbounded now. There's so much access to information, and there's so much more awareness than there was then. So I think it's up to parents to leverage those resources and speak up and communicate. It can be very isolating, and it shouldn't have to.
Very well said. Thank you, Rupa. I do see Praveen raise his hands. Praveen, please go ahead. And then I'm going to come with a question about treatment. And there's one of the person from the attendees have asked a question as well. So I'm going to put the treatment question to Geetika and Jessica. But Praveen, go ahead with your comments, please.
Yeah, I just want to tell Rupa and Tiffany that pain is relative, and we don't need to worry about the pain what we have, because I have seen many parents with so much of pain and compared to my pain. So let's just go with what you have and go with the flow.
Thank you. Yeah, no, thank you, Praveen.
I always say I'm a better person now than I ever would have been without Jake.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, no,
I am a much better human being. I thank him every day for giving me that gift.
And Tiffany, I hear that, I do hear that many times from parents. So you're a much stronger. I can see that already, and have a purpose in life as well. So Geetika, let's go towards the treatment aspect, right? One of the questions that has been coming from a viewer is, what about the biomedical intervention with supplement? Will they help? But before you even answer that, my question for you and Jessica are, can we just talk briefly about the treatments, and how Jessica also, Geetika, I want you to answer that, and Jessica also, doctors can give 5, 3, 4 options, but do you have to do the research to find what's the best treatment for your child? So if you can talk to that as well. But Geetika, go ahead first, please. Tell us the different modalities of treatment for autism.
Okay. So I think there's in autism, especially when children are young, they present different challenges. A lot of children, especially when we're talking biomedical, they might have some form of, say, a gut issue, or they might have a very significant behavioral challenge. So even before you start to talk about functional communication or social interactions, there are other barriers that you're having to interact with or manage. So that's where your doctor might be able to help you navigate some of those. So because autism is such a spectrum, and there are a lot of comorbid and co-occurring conditions, and a lot of those also tend to be biomedical in nature. It's always a good idea to be seeking resources and interventions from your doctor. But then also, while you're doing that, being very pragmatic, and also being a little bit of a little mini scientist, which we all are. And as JV was saying, with the advancement of technology, you're able to document and share data across providers so much easily. So kind of seeing that whatever medicine you might have tried, whatever intervention that you've started, how is that affecting, or what kind of behavior change or what kind of symptomatic changes is it bringing in? If things are not working and you've tried it long enough, it might be time to look for something else. And that can be very exhausting. And as a parent, I share the sentiment that you'll do whatever it takes to make sure that you're able to address this and fix it. And I truly respect that, and I never ever dissuade a parent from not trying a therapy or an intervention that they might have heard about. But then going in with that investigative mind and to see that, yep, I tried it, here's the data, I don't think it's working, or I think it's working and it's working for my child, but it may not work for somebody else. So having that lens is very important. Nazeera, is that the question did I answer your question?
Yes. If you can also tell deeply a little bit more about applied behavior
analysis. People have different feelings and emotions toward it. So, and I have evolved as a behavior analyst as well. So, at the risk of of getting mixed reviews, I will share my thought. I am a behavior analyst, so my training is behavior analytic in nature. My school in Bangalore, Stepping Stones, is an ABA-based school, but it's also a multidisciplinary school. We work with speech therapists, we work with occupational therapists, and it is data-driven, and it is very objective in nature. However, it is also very collaborative, and it is very much embedded in your natural environment. Oftentimes, when we think about applied behavior analysis, we think about tabletop teaching. We're trying to make kids work for treat, and there are a lot of analogies that come from that. And not very pleasant ones. The way I explain it to parents in very simple terms is we all work or are driven towards driven by something. If I show up to work, it's probably because I'm working towards a paycheck. It's internally motivating for me. I love my friends at work. There is something that's driving me. Other times, maybe one motivating factor is it trumps the other. So I may not like anybody in my workplace, but that money is important to me. Or I don't care about the money, but I love having the social interaction. And whenever we are trying to incorporate the child's preferences and finding something that is meaningful for them, meaningful and important for that child to work towards, that is a form of applied behavior analysis. So I don't want to make him color a circle just because he should be doing that because he's 6 years of age. What is meaningful for that child, and how can I make it fun? Praveen talked about making an environment engaging, making it stimulating. So table is not the time when I do the therapy or the ABA. It's every time in the morning when they wake up, having a routine, having a visual schedule, having so many moments, unlimited moments of teaching and instruction, prompting, modeling. That is applied behavior analysis, and rewarding them. And it's okay, we all work towards, we are all motivated by rewards, we are all also affected by punishers. Nobody wants to get a ticket. If you are, that's applied behavior analysis. And we also figure out where we're going to get a ticket and we're not going to get the ticket. Kids do the same way. All our behaviors are impacted by environmental contingencies. And that's what is the essence of ABA. And we do that in a very structured way. For children who are younger, we identify what's important for them. Language, peer interactions, being independent, being able to just functionally play with toys, or find other toys other than just one or two, so that when you're out about in the community, you're able to interact with other peers. Being objective in your goals. So I don't want my child to be good at the school. What is good? Good is very broad. It has very different meaning. In Asian culture, probably we were never good enough, in others, there might be different bars. So being very objective that, hey, I want you to be sitting for 5 minutes without throwing your toys, and I want you to work on this sheet. Now, you could be working on a chair, you could be standing, you could be on a bouncy ball, it doesn't matter. For me, the important outcome is you stay for 5 minutes and you function and finish the sheet, So that is where it's applied, it's objective, it's behavioral, and it's analytic. So I don't keep working on the same goal week after week, month after work without making modification. If things are not working, just like I said, you be a scientist in your biomedical interventions or other therapy, you do the same with applied behavior analysis. You look at your graph, you look at your data. Things are not moving in the right direction, something needs to change. So in a very layman manner, that is what I would, or that's a way to understand ABA. And I am also, and I would also add that it's one of the only intervention that has extensive evidence. It's the evidence-based science. It doesn't cure ABA. It's evidence-based to increase functional skills, and that's what is important for us to keep in mind.
Definitely. So I know the next question is for Jessica, but Praveen and Tiffany, if it's very much related to the question I asked, then please go ahead with your 10-15 second comments, and then I'll head to Jessica with the next question. Go ahead, Tiffany.
My 10-second comment is, I know there's mixed reviews on ABA, but I know that my son was an eloper, and I remember running down the street carrying my baby in the little uncomfortable, not really handy baby carrier, running madly after him so he wouldn't run in the street because he wanted to go to the pool all of a sudden. So there is a time and place where you do need to change behavior, because Without ABA, my son would probably be dead. So there's a time and a place for all these different behaviors. So not everything is all bad and not everything is all good.
Got it. That was a
All I
very
have to say.
insightful comment. Thank you so much. Praveen, go ahead. Thank you, Tiffany. Praveen?
Yeah, as a parent, I understand that ABA therapy is like a one single sentence, like learn how to learn. So that is ABA therapy, and ABA therapy, along with understanding the child and becoming an expert of the child, will produce more results. And ABA is not like a silver bullet, but it will be a silver bullet if, as a parent, if you contribute more along with the ABA therapist, the results will come. Don't depend on the therapist and say that, oh, we are not getting the results. The results doesn't come until you become an expert of your child as a parent.
Nazeera, I also wanted to add to Praveen's point, and I think as a professional, it's my responsibility also to make sure that everybody is aware. I think over the years, ABA is becoming better at self-checking itself as a profession. We've grown exponentially, and providers comes in all shapes and sizes and a variety of experiences and whatnot. And there are a lot of resources in the community that are especially helpful for parents, and especially parents who are newly diagnosed, on how to select an ABA providers. What are some important or essential features in an ABA therapy program? And what does ABA basically looks like? So just accessing those resources also allows parents to be more empowered and ask questions from their providers. And that also lets the providers know that, okay, you're not, I can't take you for a ride, I need to make sure, or, just alerts people and providers as well. So I'm happy to share resources if you feel that would be helpful for your viewers.
Yes.
But being very mindful, and then always being an advocate. If a goal does not make sense, it doesn't make sense. It does not matter what I think. It doesn't matter what my training is. If you as a parent don't find it meaningful for your child to be working on something, I have to be respecting that. And that's the communication, and that's the confidence that the team should have, with each other. And also being very multidisciplinary and working hand in hand with your speech therapists, occupational therapists, and being very respectful for each other. So I wanted to add in that plug that there are a lot of resources out there which parents can access. If they're not sure what does an ABA therapy look like, what's a good program, how does one say I have a good therapist versus not.
Sure. Thank you so much, Geetika. That's helpful. So, Jessica, my question is obviously from what all of our panelists have discussed is the treatment for autism is a multi-pronged approach, right? Which is focused on a combination of different therapies that even Geetika just mentioned. But how does one find the best treatment for their own child? And is there a cure for autism?
Thank you, Nazeera. So I don't think that there's such a thing as a cure. I think that what we talked about neurodivergency, and I think what that means to me is that, and I think several people have said this, that we are made differently, we are born differently. And, through my own journey as a parent, and I have learned about my own neurodivergences, about my own sensory issues and things that I didn't know about myself until I started thinking about this through the lens of knowing and being close to someone with autism. And to me, and just kind of echoing several things that were said today, I think a person-centered approach that looks at whatever abilities, strengths, behavioral corrections or helping people have more functional behaviors. I think that with that in mind, for example, again, is the experience I have as a parent, my child he does not take any medications. He does not have a lot of therapies, we try to encourage him to do the things that he's good at and be the best that he is at those things. We are fortunate in that he does have communication differences, but he is able to communicate effectively with us and with other people. But in his case, one challenge that we face is the dietary restrictions. He is very picky and very particular about what he is, and I think that it's not so much a pickiness, it is a sensory or lots of other factors in there, and that can affect his digestion. So we have to be very sensitive to that. So again, looking at that person and looking at their needs and making choices to help that person be as successful as they can be. I think one of those skills that really has to be taught, because to Tiffany's point earlier, we're talking about a condition, whatever word you want to call it, that will affect this person or be part of who they are through their lifespan. And self-advocacy is one of the most important kinds of things that we can help that person develop. It's part of very important through the educational journey when they enter the workforce one day, depending on where they are in that process. And so although that may not be considered a treatment, I think it's one of the most important skills that we can develop for that person. What I heard some of the other panelists talk about earlier, whether it's something that causes a delay in diagnosis, whether it's part of their diagnosis journey or part of their treatment journey, is what I heard is there is a kind of acknowledgement that there's still a lot of stigma around differences, and helping a person self-advocate is part of helping them kind of confront that stigma. And I think as parents, helping us and as people who care for someone with autism, is helping us confront that stigma. Some of those behavioral differences we talked about will be part of that person's just kind of who they are for their entire lifespan. So when they enter the workforce, understanding that that the way they communicate and the way they behave with their colleagues is going to sometimes be perceived differently. And so I think that those are the kinds of things that I think we have to prepare people for. Obviously, if a person, communication challenges are probably one of the hardest. Communication and behavioral challenges, I think, are the parts of autism that many of us have probably put the most energy into addressing, and that's where I think the ABA or speech therapy, occupational therapy, all of those things are useful tools. But at the end of the day, this person has to have the question isn't what they do, at the time of their diagnosis or the time that they are exiting high school, which is when a lot of change happens, but also when they're 40, what kinds of skills do they need, and being able to plan ahead for that. So I don't have an easy answer, but I think that it's a very complex journey. And kind of looking at those foundations of behavioral skills, communication skills, and self-advocacy, and then whatever kinds of biomedical anxiety is another one that where a lot of people have to find a path that works for them, whether that's a medical path or some other kind of therapy or approach.
Very nice. Thank you, Jessica, for those important, comments and words. Thank you. Megan, 20 to 25-second answer, please. What progress has been made so far in autism research? And coming to you, Rupa, yes, right after Megan.
That in 25 seconds, I'll just say a lot. There is... there's just so much more, and I think it has to do with awareness. I think it has to do with advocacy. I think it has to do with shared equity in this conversation for people who are diagnosed with the neurodiversity or autism spectrum disorder. And so I am more hopeful now than I ever have been, both on the research side and then on the society side. We're starting to create space for people who didn't have space before right now. And so I'm hopeful and I'm thankful for everybody who's involved in both the clinical research and the societal research. They're both equally important, so I would stress that.
Very nice. Rupa, a follow-up, please.
I was actually wanting to comment on what was previously talked about with ADA and just general therapies available for children with neurodiversity and autism. Is I think one thing I realized in the journey, my son's been in a variety of different therapies across, we moved around quite a bit. So we've lived in New York, we've lived in Chicago, now we live in Georgia. So, I've met with different school teams and IEP meetings and all that good stuff. The one thing that I think is important for parents is to know what are their priorities for their child based on their needs. And that's going to help them advocate, whether it's with the school team or whether it was with the private therapy team or whether you're making a dietary change for them. It's what are your priorities for your child and what do you want from your child? Because there's so much information out there and sometimes it's very overwhelming, but doing your research and knowing exactly what you want for your child is going to help you best advocate for your child. So I just wanted to add that piece in.
Very well said. Thank you, Rupa, for that. So Praveen and Tiffany, I want you all to tag team on this question. At least I come from a culture where we are taught to think like, what will she think, or what will the society think? Like, this is the norm. You can't go behind the norm, or you can't break the status quos, and you're going to bring a bad name. So I've heard this again and again, but I exactly did that, right? And here I am thinking, how do you get those feelings too? I mean, as parents, Praveen and Tiffany, that are they thinking anything about us? Or what I'm trying to get is, how can you tell 70% of the viewers who do not have family members affected, and tell them how to be best allies for your families? Because we're not just talking about children, they're becoming youth, and then they're becoming adults, and the teens, and then young adults, and you are part of that family. How can we, who not understand this much in detail and all the tensions and stress you've been through this journey, how can we become a part of that in understanding and helping you and support, best allies for you and the kids?
I know it's not easy, Nazeera, so I just want to tell that write it on your refrigerator or on the wall that do not worry about what people think about you and your child. Do not worry about what people talk about you and your child. It's you and your child, for point number one. Always remember this. End of the day, you and your child. If anybody keep questioning you about anything and giving you a kind of discomfort in this environment, just get out of it. So it is always anywhere, like even it is a mall or a store or it is a function or a party, anywhere. So it is not your child has to change. The people has to change. Okay, so that is their problem. The problem is not yours. The problem is there. You have a solution. So it's you and your child. And I want to add a couple of things in this session to tell every parent to have a good journey. Kids face hard times, difficult times, not with autism, but with the parents and the families who do not understand autism. Okay, and expectations versus results. Do not expect too much from your child, and if you don't have those results, it will be so much effect on your family and on your child also. And then early detection and early intervention will play a key role. Understanding the child abilities, interests, strengths, skills, and limitations lead to a good start. IQ scores, medical assessments, discussions of like my child IQ score is this much, how can I improve? No, those are nothing to do with your child. Okay, and forget the questions of like, why autism to my child? Can it be cured? Do the diet work? Do the biomedical work? No, forget about all those things. Too much of education might lead to an emotional trap, because you will be overwhelmed. Can this work? Can that work? Okay. And then joining of too many social groups, WhatsApp groups, Facebook groups will lead to, and talking about autism all day will make you more stressed and more depressed, because, oh, that child started talking, this child got toilet trained, oh, this family is going on a vacation. No, don't worry about it. Always be within your closed ones and see what help you can get. Don't read everything in social media. Okay. And autism is not a static condition that might improve tomorrow or day after tomorrow. Okay. Things will change in the preteens, teens, after teens, and then adults. So you have to ready for the challenges, and do not worry about it. Always talk to your psychiatrist or a psychologist about your mental condition. It's you as a mom and dad. Take care of yourself first, then take care of the child. Okay. Join together as a family and as a team and keep helping your child. And autism is always better than COVID is more dangerous than autism. Okay. So yeah.
Sounds good, Praveen. Very important points. Thank you. Tiffany, and then I'll take Geetika's comments. Tiffany?
So my dissertation research is actually on social norms. So, but I'm looking at it from a hiring. So you're hitting home for me there. So we can't help but be impacted by those around us. So what I look at, and I do this with my consulting customers when we're talking about how we're going to do integration or inclusive environments, we need to look at three things. One is the individual attitudes. My attitudes towards a behavior or embracing somebody who's autistic or neurodivergent is going to be highly influenced by the fact that I have a son with autism or an autistic son. So that's one thing. It's my individual attitude. So all of you, or whoever is listening to this, now you're impacted by knowledge and education, what may help change your view. But when it comes down to actually making a decision of how you're going to act, how you're going to accept somebody, if you're going to hire somebody, if you want your kid playing with another kid, comes to how you view others are going to perceive your opinion, your actions. And that's all the social norm. So we have to change those norms. So it starts with our actions and choosing not to follow that path to make new norms, which is hard. But I chose, and it took me time, I'm not saying it was easy by any means, to realize that Jake is happy and that other people may be judging him, but he doesn't know and he doesn't care. And you know what? Why do I care? And why am I bothering it? He's happy. These people aren't getting in his head. It's all me. So I changed my norms of thinking about, you know, what do I really care about? Who do I really care about impressing? I really care about educating. So I'm the one who'll say, oh, you're looking at my son funny? Well, you know, he's autistic and sometimes he does this. Or people say, Jake really seems like he's recovered from his autism. And it's like, Jake will always be autistic. His symptoms are just being more adapted to the environment. So you can't take away his diagnosis. Let me educate you so you don't go around saying, oh, that person got cured or that one's high function, everything else. That's how we're going to change these social norms. So, you know, with my research, I'm looking at how does your type of acceptance of autism, and we've talked a lot of ways about it, influence how you think society perceives your decisions to hire somebody with autism or an autistic individual, depending how you want to phrase it. So that makes a big difference on us as human beings. And if we're going to change the workforce and the workplace, we have to change those social norms of autistic, disabled, whatever you call it, people are valid employees and contributors to society.
And it comes back to your initial point about being compassionate and understanding. Yeah.
Respectfully.
Respectfully. Yes, respectfully. So, Rupa, I know you have a comment, but I also want you to team tag with Geetika on this question. Is so what about relationships, right? So do they tend to have a life of a relationship? Do they have romantic relationships? Are they hard? If you can just talk, and again, these are not questions to offend, but I think just people want to know. And also, Geetika, if you can talk to the effect, do the children or adults with autism or spectrums of autism, do they have to stick to a routine? Can you both talk to the relationship and sticking to a routine part? Go ahead,
You
Rupa.
want to go first? I'm okay either way.
Yeah.
You can go, Deepika.
Okay. I'll speak to the relationship part, and I'll say that I'm learning as I'm going, because a lot of families that I work with, as their kids grow older, I learn something new, and I would say what I have understood is that it's a new space. And if we go back to our own relationships, when we met our boyfriends, girlfriends, person of interest, when we got married, there's so much flux, there's so much learning about yourself, there's so much learning about the other person, there's also finding yourself and maintaining yourself while still establishing yourself as a couple. And I think that doesn't change when you have a person who has autism. There might be a lot more educating, there might be a lot more learning, or the learning or the educating might have to happen in a different way. And I think, I feel like I'm so unqualified to speak this, but as a family, you've gone through so much of learning history, you've gone through so many phases, that as they enter into this new phase and they find a partner for themselves, I think it's including them on the team, so that they can continue to work together and grow together. And again, I speak from a spot of being so unqualified in that aspect, because it's a challenge. Relationships in general are challenging, but I think being insightful and applying all that you've learned about yourself and what works, into this new space, into this new interaction, is what's going to help them have more positive experiences of being in a relationship.
Sure. Thank you, Kirtika.
Yeah.
Thank you. So we do have 7 more minutes before I come to your closing comments. So I want to make this. I have a few more questions that can have been answered, because some of these questions have been asked by others. But let's go to Rupa. Do they have to stick to a routine?
When you say routine, are you referring to their lifestyle and
Yes.
their day-to-day?
Yes.
I think one of the challenging pieces of autism, one of the challenging components, I should say, of autism, is each person is so different.
Got it.
So I would say some individuals are going to rely more on a routine, whether that's a visual schedule or a very structured and timed day. I think that's going to impact how what kind of profession they can go to, what kind of lifestyle they lead. And then, you have others that are a little bit more flexible in what structure and routine they're able to handle. So, I think in my opinion, with structure and routine, I think to a certain extent we all need structure and routine, but I think it is really so individual based. I can say for my son and perhaps some of his peers, I have seen routine and structure greatly helps bring the best out in what children, and as they go into young adults, what they can do. I would say the second piece of that is creating awareness to those that interact with them and are around them, to understand why that is important to them. So for example, when my son goes over to my friend's house, or even to my parents' house, we have a schedule for him, and once he knows what to expect and they also know what to expect, it creates a much more pleasant experience. And I'm sure that will be the same in a workplace or even in the community. So one thing I'm kind of learning about structure and routine is creating the awareness in the community, in society, and with employers, of being able to incorporate that in.
Very well said, Rupa. Tiffany, comments?
Lost my mouse to mute. So I work a lot with employers, and when we're hiring individuals who are neurodivergent, we try to match the jobs based on a lot of what Rupa talked about. So we try to say, is this job require flexible thinking? Does this job require, lots of communication? Does this job require that they change tasks quickly, or does it allow for front loading? And what we found is by taking a job description and assessing those areas of it and more sensory other things, we can better find fits for people, because some people neurodivergent or not, those are things they're good at and some things they're bad at. And you'll find, somebody, we talked about Asperger's or something else, they may be fine in a role where they communicate all day and talk all day and it's fine. But now they would just be considered autism spectrum disorder. Where you have someone else like my son who has been doing carts, trash, and toilets at Target 2 years, who likes knowing what he's going to do. When they change his schedule abruptly, it's hard for him. He has to he's better at it now through maturity, stop and go, okay, this is changing my plan. And just kind of like soak it in. And some people have learned to do that. But when I'm at employers and I'm helping people and we say, oh my gosh, the systems went down. We have to do this now because we need to use our time. They are pretty much gone for the rest of the day. Completely checked out, cannot handle it. And even coming back to work the next day is hard because you've changed it and their brain cannot keep up with that change. And that's just the way it is. So I think that's important to notice how you learn to self-advocate and understand how you need these environments to be consistent or flexible, how much you can take, and how to advocate for yourself to find a good school, teacher, whatever it means. All those fits need to come in, and that comes through self-advocating all the way from preschool, all the way up so that people, understand themselves and can communicate it. So I hope that made sense. That was a lot of information.
Oh yeah, no, definitely, Tiffany. I think it's been very useful. So the next question is for Megan and Jessica. If you can tag team about very quickly, because I have like 7 more questions for 20 seconds each. What annoying questions do people ask you about autism?
Oh, wow.
And where you would have said, hey, you could have educated yourself a little better before you ask this question, which could be me too, so.
I think, I don't know that there's a specific question. I think I'll just say generally that every question is motivated by fear of the unknown. And so there's not one question I get where I go, oh, I'm so annoyed that I have to answer that question. There's a group of questions that I say, well, I think this is coming from a place of fear of the unknown. So let's talk about it, and that's okay. And then if you bleed that over a little bit into people who want to be willfully ignorant, then I get a little bit annoyed. People who, once they have been supplied an answer, they just don't like it. And so you can't really do anything for individuals who don't want to accept truths about how social inclusion works, but you can educate them and get them out of the box of fear. And I think that that's kind of where I exist with the question issue.
Definitely, Jessica.
Yeah, I would echo a lot of what Megan said. To me, and again, I also don't want to be offensive to anyone, but some of the behavioral differences that some people I know with autism, children and adults, show can be perceived by others as annoying or disruptive or different. And when people, we talked a lot in this today about empathy and understanding. And it's most hurtful when it's someone close to you who chooses not to be empathetic or gets frustrated or annoyed by those behaviors and chooses not to kind of look at the drivers, look at the roots of that. I find that most hurtful. I wouldn't say annoyed, but the last thing I would say is that the hardest interactions I've had as a parent were driven by lack of understanding, to the point once my child had a meltdown in a store and they sent a security guard to talk to me, and I found that to be I'm a person who's interacted a lot with law enforcement. I felt I'm not uncomfortable with law enforcement, but if I weren't, that would have been a very scary and frankly kind of humiliating experience. And so I think that's a place, we didn't talk a lot about safety today, but I think those are some of the things that many parents and people who love someone with autism do worry about.
Definitely. Thank you so much. Tiffany, quickly, you can unmute yourself. I think you had a comment.
Dang it. So first of all, I think one of the main comments that my team tells me that are autistic, when people say we're all a little autistic, they're like, no, you're not. It just really infuriates them. So things like that. But there's also a study that came out that said they did a research on individuals' knowledge or perceived knowledge of autism. And what they found is people who think they know more about autism than they actually know close their mind to learning what's really going on or changes or the variety of it. So there's almost a bigger concern with people who think they understand it when they don't. So I think those are just really interesting things to think about. And last thing I'm gonna add real quick is we're at a client and we have an individual working for us who drives, who's autistic and has a bit of a speech slur, it's not necessarily sounds as clear. There's a really crazy intersection and they got hit by a car, a little accident. And when they got out, they called the police and the paramedics. They were trying to arrest her because they thought she was on drugs because of her speech. And it was just, we ran out there, everybody ran out there and took care of it, but it showed you the lack of ignorance of people or the police officers on that. And this poor person was just scarred for life. They just got in a car accident. So that goes a lot with Jessica said. There's so much education too that needs to go on in the law enforcement areas. So I'll be quiet now.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Tiffany. Praveen, I do have a question for you, and you can add your comments as well. Let's quickly talk about wills and trusts, right? There were a few questions from attendees who said, who will take care of my child if anything happens to me? Should I put money on him? I save money in my child's name. Should I have a special needs trust? Should they have a lawyer? If you can, 20 seconds, please. Only because of time rush, I'm trying to make sure we get some of those important points out. Praveen, unmute, please.
Yeah, Nazeera, we haven't created any trust as of now. When I spoke to the social worker in our county, and she said a couple of options for us. So we might be going for a kind of a will to explain in the way who will take care of Pranav. But luckily we have his brother Kritik. He's 14 years old now. So if we wait for few more years, he will be the one, because from the day Pranav was Kritik was born, he started looking at his brother, and he's like a therapist and a teacher and a guide and a friend for him. And he's the one who made him inclusive in his friend circle. So I just want to add the previous questions, and that in the Indian community, I'm not talking anything about negative side, but most of the families, they measure the success of children with the scores and academics. But we have families here in Rochester, Minnesota, very inclusive, and they adopt Pranav Pranav is the top priority in any party or any get together. So the children also will never ask questions like why Pranav is not playing, why Pranav is not talking. So even if I go outside for a walk, people will take care of Pranav. So a social worker said, usually when something happens to you and your wife at the same time, which doesn't happen, if something happens like that, the county will come over and they will take care of, because the case is open for him. His personal case is in the county. So they will come over and find a right family member that is taken care at least for a few days. We have such families here. If something happens to us, they'll definitely come over. So we have a very good family friend circle. So as of now, I haven't gone for the will, but that is the one which I'm going to do in a few days.
Okay, sounds good to know. So, Rupa, having a sibling, what is the hardest part of, I think Praveen brought a positive aspect of having a sibling. Is there anything you would like to add? How the siblings' tension, siblings' understanding of why they have a brother or sister?
I think that's a great question. And I think when there is a family member who is neurodiverse, it affects the entire family, parents and siblings alike. And from a sibling's point of view, Praveen alluded to, my daughter is very protective of my son, and when we go out in the community, if he's unable to communicate something or if he needs something, she speaks up for him, and she's very, very close. And I'm very grateful for that relationship. However, I also know that it's affected her in the sense that as she was growing up, when we chose family activities, vacation spots, a lot of it revolved around what my son was able to manage to or tolerate. And I think it's important for parents to be aware of that and ensure that they have that communication channel and supports in place for the sibling or siblings so that they understand why that child may be getting additional support or why we're doing things different ways. And I think just explaining that to them is important. So as they get older, they don't become resentful or have questions, but rather embrace it. And secondly, making sure that they're well supported in their own world. You know, whether it's activities, extracurricular activities, their friend circle. One of the things we do with my daughter is we have other families who have a child with autism, and she is friends with those siblings, so they can talk about it. So as much as parents need support groups, so do the siblings. So providing those opportunities, I think, is key.
Very nice. And Tiffany, I do want to spend 30 seconds right after this question with a couple of others about employment and how HR professionals, and I think that's what you are in that field. But Megan, let's talk about taking care and family care, right? Like it's so, I mean, we can't imagine just how a person or a parent or a family member has to take care of themselves first. Can you just give the audience or the viewers of how important that taking care of oneself is?
It's extremely important. It's like when you're on the airplane and they say you have to put on your own mask first before you assist somebody else. That's true. You know, all of us are parents here, and you cannot help somebody else without helping yourself first. You know, when I make plans with families and, you know, my work is basically all the way up to the door of what Tiffany does, we are working intensely on creating a plan so that the individual at the center of it can walk through the door of a business that Tiffany's been working with and become a really valued member of that team. And that only happens with the intense work of all the people in that ecosystem, parents really at the leader of that, you know. And so if you're a parent and you've taken on creating like a major path towards inclusive employment, then you've taken on a lot, and you have to be centered and you have to be focused. And to do that, you have to be okay with where you are. I've seen parents break down. You know, I think everybody here that's a parent has told their story about how they kind of like hit the bottom. And that bottom is not where you want to be helping somebody at. And so when I first enter a relationship with a family, my first question is, how are you doing? Because a lot of the time, no one's asked for a long time. And so sometimes that's step one before we make an elaborate plan for your child to go from where they are to whatever's next. Like, let's get you centered. And going from, it's really important. If there's a takeaway from either the people on this panel or the people watching here in the States or elsewhere, it's okay to say, I'm going to center myself for a second, and then I'm going to help the people in the ecosystem.
Great. So, is there an advice out there for parents to go get counseling or support system that will help them be stronger?
I mean, there's a million places you can go, and a lot of ways to dice, like how do you help yourself? I think to Praveen's point, diving into multiple online chat rooms can be both a benefit and it can kind of hurt at the same time. Everybody's in a different place, and all of those places are okay. I would say probably find somebody that you're in an equal position with in terms of what are your child's goals, where is your family. I mean, geographically, it's important. You know, Rupa's idea of like going and hanging out with another family who has a child with similar abilities is excellent, because then you have a lot to talk about and you have a common goal and common ground. And so, you know,
Sure.
There's not one place to go get help, but I think you start with, okay, who's in a place like me, who thinks like me, who has similar aspirations like I do? Do our children have similar aspirations? That's a great place to start.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you. So 1 minute for, and then I want to go for closing comments right after this question is for Tiffany, probably Geetika and Rupa, or Megan also, and maybe you all can chime in, or maybe have one or two people answer. So basically what we are doing, previously labeled as disabled, are actually coming out as more abled in certain areas of employment, right? So the company grows with them, the people learn more about them, and the whole environment becomes optimistic for them. So how can we continue to educate the HR professionals, the HR departments? And I think many big companies such as HP, Microsoft, and Ford and EY are starting to employ spectrums of autism impacted children or adults. So how can we continue that momentum?
First, we need to remember that it's not all about technology, that people who identify as neurodivergent have many skills that are all over the place. So that's kind of the first thing. And so when it comes for HR groups, they need to know that disclosure is a significant issue to overcome people who are neurodivergent. And we really haven't brought up other things that fall under neurodivergent, which is dyslexia, dysgraphia, Tourette syndrome, ADHD, all those things. They're not visible. So if you're not creating an environment where people feel safe enough to disclose, they're not going to ask for accommodations. They're not going to go through the laws, and we won't go into all that stuff. It creates an environment where they can't get what they need to work. So what we work with HR people is to create an environment where people can say, I work best when. And so they're self-advocating. And then the environment from the HR people has to be open to listening to these things and knowing that people need things available in learning, different learning styles, that we can't provide everything in one means. We need to change around our interviews to be able to do work-based interviews or ways where people can show what they do instead of selling themselves. So there's so much that the HR teams can do that really change the whole landscape of employment. Because right now it's 83 to 85% unemployment rate for individuals who are autistic, and sometimes even higher when they have a college degree. And it's going to start with the HR people. They are the gateholders to the organizations.
Definitely. Rupa, Geetika, quick follow-up?
To that, I think Tiffany makes excellent points. The only thing that comes to my mind is it's important that HR is part of your planning as well. You depending upon the size of the company and the ones that we talked about, they're fairly large organizations. But when some of the small businesses or the smaller organizations are looking to employ, I think it's important that we have HR as part of the planning and decision making from the very beginning, because the last thing we want is somebody to think that, oh, why am I the one to have to deal with this? Because, then they don't have the buy-in, they're not educated, they're not empowered. And just because their bosses thought it was a good idea to have, have diversity included as part of your employment mission, they might not feel ready for it. And I think it's important that we are educating at all levels within an organization so that you are actually preparing for success. And it's okay to go slow. And it's okay to say that we want to make sure that we educate everybody first before we think about employing somebody, because we don't want to have a person to have a bad history when they come in as an employees within an organization.
Definitely. So, Rupa, I know you have your hands raised, but why don't you also give your comment and start with closing comments, 20-second closing comments. If there's any, the closing comments is for all the panelists. Please provide any information you want to share with viewers, might be about your social group that you want people to join, might be the resource that people don't have access to, maybe that website, or if they can connect with you at some point. So some of those you can enter in the chat box or even mention it also, please. I'm giving it this. So this won't be considered as promotion at all, but definitely the information that needs to be shared with out there with those who need and those who would like to learn. So go ahead, Rupa, along with your closing comments, please. Okay, Rupa.
Sorry, are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay, this is very enlightening for me. I think in terms of closing comments here, I'm still very early in the journey of looking at my son he's going to be 14 this summer. So this was very enlightening for me and hopefully for all the viewers in learning about different opportunities available as we go into young adulthood. Over the next few years, I look forward to getting more involved in this space. And I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you, Rupa. And I also want to please encourage each of you connecting with each other. You have all of your emails, each other. I see a lot of bits and pieces that y'all can connect and actually improve upon what y'all are doing as well as an added, information. So please feel free to do that. Megan, closing comments, as well as if any resources you want to share from what you do or anything that people should know. Unmute, please. You're on unmute.
Pardon. You can find me on LinkedIn. If you're a family that wants some advice, we do roundtables all the time. Or if you're interested in how does workforce development work with neurodiversity. And so all of those things are topics that I cover and consult on. So you can find me on LinkedIn and we can connect. And in terms of, what I say in closing is I'm, for the first time in a long time, very encouraged about what I see happening on a society and on a business level, both here in the States and abroad. And so this is only going to keep going if we keep collaborating and keep moving forward. So I would encourage everybody, families, businesses, chambers of commerce, to invite this conversation in. And really lean on each other and collaborate because there's so much work to be done. And it will only get accomplished, and it will get accomplished faster if we work together.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Megan, for your time. Tiffany, please.
I just want to say, we're dedicated to creating inclusive environments. We don't believe in just hiring. So if you're interested in learning more about what that looks like, we're research-based, practice-based. We have the voice of the community working with us every day. So at gritandflow.com or Tiffany at gritandflow.com, if you're interested in learning more about the steps, please give us a holler. If you're just worried about strategizing for moving forward, we believe in looking at neurodiversity as a part of your DE&I. It is a diversity in itself and should be considered in all your diversity planning. We'd be happy to help out with just the strategic part with that too. Please call us or call somebody, but please bring in some people that understand the industry well.
Very well said, Tiffany. Thank you. I believe we've also answered at least majority of the questions that the registrants have asked. It was incorporated into our conversations, and they might reach out to you at some point if the questions were not answered during the session. So we have Jessica. Go ahead.
Thank you so much, Nazeera, and thanks to all the panelists because I have learned so much today. I think just a couple of quick things I would say. For a person who is watching this and is curious about autism or in neurodiversity, but does not know or has not experienced this themselves, I would encourage them to talk to a person who identifies as neurodiverse, who either has a diagnosis and is willing to share their story, because I do think the best way is to talk to folks who are living this life. I would also say, for me, a book that helped me really think about employment was written by a man named Randy Lewis, and I went and saw him speak at Georgia Tech, and it really changed a lot for me. And the book is called No Greatness Without Goodness. He was an executive at Walgreens and really helped lead some of their work. And again, that inclusive employment has really boomed in the last, 5 to 10 years in particular. And lastly, as I mentioned earlier, I am a volunteer advocacy ambassador with Autism Speaks. They do have a lot of resources on their website especially for families that have been recently diagnosed and are looking for some tools. So I would recommend that as another resource. And just want to say thank you once again.
Thank you so much, Jessica, for your entire morning spending with us. And thank you to all your special family members who allowed and shared your time with us as well. Gitika, please.
I'll keep it brief. Again, Nazeera, thanks for including me on the panel. It was the best Sunday morning I've had in a long time, and the chai definitely tasted better with such a wonderful company. Just like Megan, you can connect with me on LinkedIn, also on Facebook. If you want to know more about my teaching, I'm a faculty at Ball State. I'm a director at a school for children with autism. It's called Stepping Stone Center in Bangalore. You can look me up and reach me if you have any questions. If you're a family who's looking for resources, we do have several training courses, both for individuals who want to know about autism or for parents who want to learn more about applied behavior analysis. We are a multidisciplinary center, and we try to find resources and kind of like be a one-stop place for all things related to autism and ABA. Feel free to reach me out with any of your questions. There's nothing. I'll try my best to help you as much as I can. And again,
Definitely.
thanks for having me.
Thank you. I just want to make sure, Tiffany, I got to you right with closing comments. Okay, good. Praveen, you finally, please.
Yeah. Nazeera, first of all, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to share my views and perception as a parent in this group of panelists. And thank you all. I learned a lot today, and please let me know if there is anything I can contribute in the future in the areas of special needs as a parent perspective. And I just want to tell like a few lines before my opportunity. All the parents, including myself, autism is not a destiny or a karma or end of the world. It is just a diagnosis, and there is no medicine, magic, or a miracle to treat autism. Only love, affection, support, and providing meaningful opportunities to the child will always be a best thing for the child and for the family. And I'm like so many questions I get from parents like this will work, Ayurveda work, homeopathy work, that treatment, this treatment, stem cell. I always say that if there is any groundbreaking help or a solution for autism, it will be in the news, all sensational news throughout the world in the media, and all the billionaires who have special needs children, they are also waiting for it. So let's wait until the groundbreaking comes in. But till now, there is nothing as of now as a quick solution. So don't exploit your children in terms of treatments and methods that will damage more to your family and to the child also. So trust me, I run a very big group in the world, Autism Parents Hub, and please join the group if you want to share your knowledge or if you have any concerns or if you want to give your shoulder to the parents. You just Google it, Autism Parents Hub. You can join the group, and we have like very good parents, and we always share only the positive things. And if there is something happens to the child or to the family, if that is posted in the group, we will provide all kinds of support to that parent in that area as early as possible. So we have such a huge network of parents. We are all strong. We can change this world as a special world for our children. That's my promise. I will do this before I die. Thank you.
Oh my gosh.
Thank you.
Very yay. And Praveen, thank you for accepting me to join that group as well. And that's how I came to know Praveen's inspiring positivity that I said everybody needs to know and connect with each other. Thank you all so much. Panelists, thank you, thank you, thank you. I have no words for spending the entire morning with us. I became emotional, and I'm a sensitive person, but I think I learned a lot. Yeah. And I'm going to continue to learn a lot. And running a business, I'm also going to think towards inclusive policy, Tiffany. So that's how I'm changing myself, and I'm going to talk to my team members as well. And every month we run Time Just Chat sessions every month on different topics. Please join us. There's no cost to participate. It's only to build bridges of more understanding and creating an inclusive, understanding, compassionate world. So thank you again for all of you, and have a wonderful rest of the Sunday afternoon or night wherever you are from. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Bye bye, guys. Take care. Yeah. Bye bye. Take care. Bye bye.